Hello, everyone. Before we dive into today's episode, I wanted to remind you that my book, Drummers on Drumming, is available now on Amazon as both a paperback and an ebook. Based on the Big Fat 5 segment of this podcast, where I sit down with my favorite drummers to discuss the 5 records and stories that shaped their approach to the instrument, this book is packed with insights from the drummers who redefined how we think about the modern drum set. You can grab your copy now by checking the link in this episode's show notes or simply searching Drummers on Drumming on Amazon. So thank you for all the support, and now let's get into the show.
Oh, and hey you guys, this is Jessica Burdeaux. I'm Ben's guest on Big Fat 5 this week. Thanks for listening. Am I supposed to say something like that?
What is up? Welcome back to Big Fat 5, a podcast financially supported by Big Fat Snare Drum. As you heard, this week's guest is Jessica Burdeaux, aka Jaybird, with the handle JBirdsBeats on Instagram. Link in the show notes. She's a former guest of the show before we switched to the current format, so I knew I had to get her back on. I'm confident you've seen her on either social media, Drumeo, or Reverb.com, for whom she's sort of become the face of drumming. She's extremely powerful and plays with a conviction that is undeniably fun to both watch and listen to. Her creative, syncopated rhythms have caught the attention of the entire drumming community, and I'm very happy to call her a dear friend. She's a badass and a self-described hoot, and I'm gonna leave it at that. You know her, you love her. Here's Jessica Burdeaux on the 5 records that shaped her into the now full-time drummer she is today. Cheers. Well, let's just get into your drumming. And so I know that we've talked about this off the record, and you've probably exhaustively talked about this, but Reverb. A lot of people that might not know your name definitely know your face from the Reverb. So how did that come about that you became Reverb's house drummer again?
So I actually had, when I was in college, I knew I was in the school band, and I knew one of the guys that was in percussion with me went on to work for Reverb. I believe he still does, but they had been doing series for, drum series where they were showing, how to make your drum sound like, John Bonham's or who, whatever. That was the series they had been starting, and he was doing them. He was kind of doing the drumming in those. And then at some point they were trying to branch out and start having some different drummers come in and do things. And at that point I'd been at it for a little while with all my social media stuff. And so he thought of me for one of the videos. And again, at that point they were trying to bring in like a lot of different drummers, but after I went in, it just kind of became, they just kept calling me for stuff, and it just stuck. We just all got along so well, and had so much fun that, they kept calling me, and I'm really grateful for that. So
what do you think it is? I mean, besides your drumming, there's obviously, they could get a million drummers that are amazing. What do you think it is about you that they gravitated towards? If you could be not humble for a second.
Okay. Well, if you want me to be not humble, I think it's obvious that I am a hoot. I think I'm a great time. I think. Wow,
you went right there. I like it.
Aside, I'm a hoot. That's it. I do think that it had a lot to do with our all of our personalities. The team there. We had so much fun. So I did the initial video where there actually wasn't any talking in the first video I did. It was how to sound like Travis Barker, which is, we'll get into that, but that's coincidental. They didn't know that I was such a fan or, so impacted by him. It was just the video that they just so happened to be doing and asked me to be a part of. So that one, it was, I wasn't hosting it. I was just doing the playing. And so I think after that one, I came up, came into the studio extremely prepared and on time. And so that was a good start. And it just went very smoothly. And then when I came in for the first one, where it was more of, I think it was 5 different snare drums for 5 different genres or something. When I came to do that, the setup of reverb is there's people in the room, filming with me, of course, even though you're only seeing me. And I was just talking, like I would joke with them, and I had no idea any of that would be cut into the finished product. And so we were all getting along and laughing and stuff. And then after that, they ended up cutting all these silly puns and dad jokes into the finished product. And that kind of became a thing. I do think it was kind of the way that we were all joking and laughing and getting along. It kind of helped, create more video opportunities because they liked that. And I think they wanted that to continue. And so I do think mostly it was, the way that things just kind of happened in the studio so naturally. And it was just fun. The energy in the video was fun. And I do believe that has played a part in why it's been going on for a few years now. It just was a natural fit, and they liked my jokes. I don't know what to say.
Just be yourself, people, and then it'll find its way in. Yeah. All right. Well, I mean, I definitely know you have a love for Travis Barker. We had talked about that. So let's just get into your top 5. But
sure.
yeah, the specifics of exactly what it is, I don't know. So I'm excited to hear this. But number 1 is from the album. It's the untitled Blink-182 record, usually just called the self-titled, from 2003, which was the last one before their big breakup, the last of the first batch of Mark, Tom, and Travis. The song's Violence, which I believe is track 4. I love this record as well. Full disclosure, I also am a huge Travis Barker fan. I don't think that's any secret. Of course, Travis Barker. So let's just listen to a little bit of it, and then we can talk about it.
What a good fill.
Six bottles went down the drain. 1 hour's a waste of time. I'd ask if you feel the same. Still pushing that chance to try. Your breath in this cool room chill. Long hair that blows side to side. You speak and make time stand still. And each time you walk right on by. Like violence, you and me forever and after. Like violence, you kill me forever.
I mean, you can take so much away from that, but what exactly did you take from that?
That intro fill, the hair, the like, oh my gosh, it's just so. I think so that album in general, I could go through every single song and pinpoint a moment that I really love, but that particular intro is just so cool the way it built, and there's just an energy and a creativity that he brings to the table on this record and in that song that have always stuck out to me so much. And when I initially, spoiler alert, there's another Blink album on this list, but the reason that I have this album that came out after Take Off Your Pants and Jacket on the list, so I kind of went in order, but this album was, I think it was 2004. I was on vacation in Greece for like a month. And I don't know if you remember those little like square they're not a Walkman. They took like a little floppy disk.
I know, they're like little mini discs.
Yeah. What are those called? I don't even know, but it was a little floppy disk.
Do they have like the little picture of the record on them too? Like the really small picture of it?
This was more like you upload your music, whatever you want on this little, I'll have to find it, but it was like a trendier little Walkman MP3 player type thing. But I had this, I think my brother maybe had put this album on one of those. And anyway, so there was a lot of driving on this trip, and I hadn't really dug into Blink yet. I was pretty young in 2004. I was like 11 or 12 or something. And this album, I listened to it so much on that trip. I was gone for like a month, and it was kind of, I think, if I'm remembering correctly, what started getting me into, pop punk alternative genre. And so I just really dove in, and then all these parts and all these songs are super nostalgic in that way. Mm-hmm. And there's just everything on that album there's so many grooves that are just so creative. I don't know. It's just so very Travis. I just can't even really put it into words.
What was your level of drumming at that point? I mean, could you play a lot of that stuff on that record, or was it so over your head? You're like, I don't even know what this is, but I just like it.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah. At that point, I hadn't really been playing the drum set for very long at all, because that would put me in, I don't know, whatever grade, 6th grade, 7th grade at that point. And drums were very new. And so everything I was hearing was so new to my ears. And there's so many, again, just like Feeling This and I Miss You and like all these super iconic grooves on that album. And it was unlike anything I had really heard before. And it was what I wanted to sound like. And that's what got me to like, so I did eventually, after I started digging into even more Blink songs, that was like, he was the first drummer I wanted to sound like, Mm-hmm. So that was a big deal for me. And his parts are so well thought out and so complimentary of whatever the guitars are doing, vocals are doing. There's so much thought put into his drumming and his parts. So that was definitely something. I think at the time I didn't really realize what exactly I liked. I just thought it sounded crazy. Mm-hmm. It was very ear catching for me. And it was mostly that at the time that really caught my attention. I just really hadn't heard drumming like that before.
Yeah, I'm a little older than you, and I remember I was obsessed with Blink since Enema, and I remember it almost felt like Beatlemania for me, because I grew up, all my immediate friends were like skateboarders, snowboarders, Blink, basically Blink's fan base, and I remember how crazy anticipated that album was, and I heard like an excerpt of Feeling This on like a promo for the Madden football soundtrack when those were huge. Yeah. I mean, back in the early 2000s, that was like, if you got on the Madden playlist of the next game that came out, that was like kind of like a Tony Hawk Pro Skater kind of vibe. And I was because it was a weird spot of Feeling This. It was like just the guitar riff and the verse. And I was like, it kind of like you, I'd never heard anything like this before. And I'd listened to their stuff prior to that. But I'm like, what riff is this? What drum beat is that?
Right.
I still don't even know how to describe that drum beat. Not to take away from Violence, because I love that pick. That Hair to Fill is awesome. But kind of like what you were saying, it's like you can pick any one of these songs and talk about it. But the drum beat and the verse of Feeling This still I don't know how to describe that to people.
Right. It's just so good. I don't know. It's so catchy. Just the part writing is so catchy and inventive. And yeah, how do you describe it? It's just really good. Like that's it,
Well, let's just go to number 2, which is again also Travis Barker. And I believe you did this in your Reverb video, right?
Yeah, so I did in the very first one, and I said to them I would love to do a more in-depth video about like pop punk drum sounds, different pop punk artists. And so we'll probably do that. But in that initial one, it was just kind of breaking down the general sound of his drums it wasn't like from a particular album. It was more of
the vibe.
just kind of his, if you're trying to get a cool pop punk drum sound, those are some steps you could take. But I would love to do another one where we get really into it.
Yeah, so the album is Take Off Your Pants and Jacket. The release year is 2001. Artist is, of course, Blink-182. Travis, same drummer. And the song is Roller Coaster.
Yeah.
All right, here we go.
Breathing deeply, walking backwards, finding strength to call and ask her. Roller coaster, favorite ride. Let me kiss you one last time. Leave me standing here, act like I'm not around. The coast will probably never clear. Can I please go home now? I had that dream about you again, where I wait outside until you let me in, and there I stay. Lay beside me and listen at the wall. We'll keep on lying until the summer comes. I had that dream about you again, where you drive my car right off a fucking cliff. And now I'm breathing deeply, walking backwards, finding strength to call and ask her. Roller coaster, favorite ride. Let me kiss you one last time.
Gosh, this groove, this right here, this bridge, and all that is such a Travis thing. The
Dome
ride to the
hi-hat.
hi-hat. Yeah. Oh.
Me promise that I will never tell.
The whole vibe of this song, it's just like, it makes me feel so, I don't know, it makes me smile. Like, it's just so good and so fun to listen to. And, a Blink in general, right, like you were saying, just like a simple guitar riff. Here's the thing about, I think they're like some of the best songwriters ever. How many, like the catchiest, like they have serious songs, they have goofy songs, they're just so good at songwriting. And then I do think that some of the more simple guitar riffs open up that space for the busier drum parts, and that's what makes it, like, glues them all together. Like, they just fit so well, just their part writing all around. And yeah, that song, I think that's maybe the first, I could be wrong, but it's the first or one of the first songs I learned from Blink, and it really, really helped me get better at the drums, sitting down, and I would just like try to break it down and learn all the different sections. And yeah, learning those grooves like made me feel like, oh gosh, so excited to just keep practicing more and breaking more things down. And so I really did learn a lot about drumming through this album. I mean, all of Blink, but learning this album in particular, because like I said, I was kind of going in reverse. Like I was listening to the self-titled track or album, and then I just started deep diving into all their other stuff, and learning that groove is, oh man, one of the best Blink songs just for nostalgia for me. So yeah, really good.
What do you, and I get this a lot when I bring up Travis and a bunch of my drumming, or if I'm being honest, non-drumming circles, people definitely have their opinions on Travis. What do you say to people that say Travis kind of started a endemic of drummers that overplay? What's your view on people that would criticize? Because I think that's the biggest criticism of Travis, is that everyone overplays because of that frickin' guy.
Well, for me, again, I didn't know much about the drums at all when I first started listening to Blink and getting into music. And And hearing him play was what made me think, gosh, that's so cool. Like, I would love to sound like this guy. And to me, overplaying or being too busy doesn't make you a bad drummer. And I think that the thing that makes you a good drummer is being able to, if someone says, hey, try something like this, you can play something more along the lines of what they like. If someone gives me a track and says, can you write something for this? I really listen to it and try and hear everything that's going on and write things that are complementing maybe even multiple parts of the track at a time, and listening to the vocal melody, listening to everything. And I would try and make something that's not the obvious choice. And that's what I think I've always enjoyed about Travis, is he just doesn't play the obvious thing. He takes time to make something a little cooler. But I think if you said to Travis, hey, can you play something a little more simple here? He can do it. So if people are playing a lot and overplaying, or, whatever, if that's what people are saying, that's their choice, because that's what they like to hear. And there's nothing wrong with that. And some people, that's exactly what they want from them. There are many drummers they could hire instead if they don't like that. But I think Travis is capable of playing any way you want him to play. So I don't really agree that he caused an issue for the future, future drummers, because they tried to replicate what he was doing. Like, look at Neil Peart was, I think, such a fancy drummer and was similar, where he was playing things that were extremely detailed and changing the parts a lot as the song went. And I don't know, everyone thought he was awesome for it. So it's interesting that anyone would hate on Travis, but I totally don't think I'd be kind of hating on myself if I said, yeah, it's an issue, because I totally try, learn to kind of write from listening to him.
Yeah, no, I definitely say most of my instincts when I'm playing to anything that is louder comes from Travis. He's my boy. Whether I listen to a lot of his stuff currently, that's up for debate. But so much of what I play is from him as well. I don't hate on him either. So I know people probably say things about his dynamics and stuff too. But when I listen to, and we'll get more into the other albums I listed, but his energy and the way he hits the kit, I love that personally. I love how he brings the sound out of the drums, and it definitely had an impact on how I hit the drums. And again, if someone wants me to play softly, I'll do it. I can do it. But naturally, I love the way it sounds when you get that rim shot on the snare, or you're really, so it's all preference, right? So I don't think there's nothing wrong with it either way. It's like, play how you want to play, and the right people will find you for the right gigs. There you go. Let's bookend that topic right there. All right. So moving on from Travis, unfortunately, because I think you and me could probably riff on him all day.
Yeah.
Number 3, the album is Riot, and the release year is 2007. The artist is Paramore. The song choice is For a Pessimist, I'm Pretty Optimistic. And it's Zach Farrow, who was so incredibly young when he recorded this. Was he like 15?
Oh my 16? God. When they got signed, I think he was like 12 or something, for real. He was so young. For all we know is Falling. So he had to be, of course, like just a young teen when they did this album. So yeah, very young.
Yeah. All right. Well, this is the first track on the record. So album opener right here.
This too, like just the power in his playing. Like I've always gravitated toward that style of drumming. I just think it sounds so good. Oh, like this right here. Oh,
so good. Yeah, very dynamic for sure.
Oh, it's so good. This band, oh my goodness. I can't get enough of Paramore. Through all their stages, all their different albums, they're just one of the best bands.
So Zach and his brother, they're back in the band full time, right?
Not his brother.
Okay.
Not Josh, but it's right now, I think, just Taylor, Zach, and Haley.
Okay.
Mm-hmm. And I could have picked so many songs off of that album, but I hit that intro song, and it just captures their essence on that entire album so perfectly. Like, so many huge intros, and the drumming is just so, I don't even know what the word is, just like bombastic. It's just huge and deep, and he hits so hard, and he again, I think he too is just such a great part writer, and he really plays to the riffs, to the vocal melodies. That's, of course, something I've mentioned a few times now. I just really love when it's the drums are not just doing the most obvious thing, because you could play things under those guitar riffs that are completely different and a little more straight ahead, but hitting all the accents, changing with all the changes in the chords, it's just so good. I don't know. It's what a good drummer.
How old were you when this came into your life?
I was probably maybe like a sophomore in high school or something.
Okay, so pretty much when it came out, right?
Yeah. Was I? It's
maybe a little later.
The timeline is a little foggy. I was probably like I was in high school, I think, but I feel also like I had known of Paramore prior to that. But high school, I know for certain, is when I got super into Paramore and started listening to them a ton, and yeah, including like, again, diving back into like All I Know Is Falling and everything, and just. That was when they first were on my radar, but incredible drumming, incredible part writing on that whole album. And just, again, it's just so powerful. Mm-hmm. Everything too, the riffs, the singing, just the whole thing. But that drumming is just so in your face, and I love it.
And it's pretty restrained too. I mean, he's obviously, I don't want to say busy, but he has a lot of parts, obviously, but still, if you play along to it, you can tell, like, when I do, I want to put more bass drum things than he does. He actually is pretty much like, let's cut the fat. It's just the powerful beats, and they're iconic. They're riffs in and of themselves. But it's kind of like a very Dave Grohl thing, where it's actually more reserved than you realize.
I think that's a good comparison. That kind of power, that energy that Dave has is similar for sure. And yeah, maybe Zach is almost comparing to like Travis's style. Travis, he has it's a little more involved with the 16th note stuff, and he does a lot of different rudimental, kind of, he just has some parts that are pretty detailed, and I think Zach does and I think Zach has that as well, but a little not watered down, because it still is incredibly detailed and awesome, but a little less going on maybe than Travis's stuff, but still just awesome. And then it just continues on with, like listening to Decode, and then their, like Brand New Eyes album, and like all these awesome tracks and stuff. But Zach has definitely just this epic sound to his style that I've always really enjoyed and tried to model my playing after.
Did you enjoy it maybe just differently, but maybe as much? Was it their self-titled record with like Elon on it?
Oh yeah. Oh my gosh. Self-titled.
Yeah.
So good. Yeah. And right. Totally different drummer, but still has that same, it's probably by design that they had someone who brought, like, cause the riffs and everything on the self-titled album were still, their style. I'm not going to say it changed on self-titled, but there was like it was definitely developing. And they had some different sounds on there, but they still had like big, powerful riffs, and the drumming matched it on there too. And Elon did a really good job. I love that record. I love that record. I mean, I love Paramore. obviously I've said it 10 times already, but I seriously can't get sick of them. They're exactly what I want to hear. Everything they've ever put out. It's so good.
All right. So the next one, number 4, is The Used. Release year is 2002, and the artist is, of course, The Used. It's a self-titled record, and the song choice is Greener Than Scenery, and the drummer is Brandon Steineckert. Yeah, this album represents a huge part of my childhood too, which is the John Feldman production sound of that era, and because John's had a few different kind of eras. But anyways, let's maybe just listen to this record or this song, and then we'll go
whole
from
record,
there.
beginning to end. Let's go.
I'm sorry. Yeah, buckle up, guys. Here we go.
What a groove.
Yeah, I mean, he could have done the 6/8 thing.
Right. See, that exactly. It's just not the obvious choice, and that's so creative.
Because he kind of plays it as if it's like a 6/4.
Yeah.
And then when it finally opens up to this, you're like, this is okay. Because if you're not a musician, you're like, I don't know what's going on musically. And then you're like, oh, okay, it's this vibe.
And this kind of reminds me of Travis a little bit.
Like, just like,
so.
Which this came out in 2002. I mean, I'm sure Brandon was influenced by Travis for sure. I mean, Travis was in this genre of music. He was the dude.
Ah, so good. This whole album too, just
oh yeah.
Taste of Ink.
Box Full of Sharp Objects.
Yeah, just and this drum sound too. That snare that gives you that really good crack and like the big tom sound, and just I think that this is just so I'm always gonna love this type of music. Like it's so good.
Yeah, I mean, I know this is a Big Fat Snare Drum, financially supported by Big Fat Snare Drum podcast, but this snare drum, when it comes to a feel of just like when I'm air drumming and I imagine the vibrations that a snare is giving back to me, it's these kind of snares are just like the most fun to play. Before we go on to number 5, I do want to talk to you about African rhythms and perhaps, working with Earl Talbot. So do you want to just maybe talk a little bit about that influence on you and how you brought that into, because I mean, Travis, great example. He brought a lot of that stuff into pop punk that now we associate with things that drummers do in that genre, but most people weren't. So African rhythms, how are you bringing in that into what you do?
Yeah, that's an awesome question. And that's so funny too, because again, this was challenging to think of these different albums and how they shaped me, because then eventually just all sorts I mean, I've had influences from a lot of other different types of music and so many different styles now at this point in my career. And this list was more about early on in my formative years, but yeah, definitely like now African rhythms, I feel like the way they've kind of shown themselves in my playing. Well, first of all, they've opened up my coordination in a way that I never imagined. And I learned so many different grooves and types of grooves that it's just like, I do things with my ghost notes now. And I do things with, changing, I'm able to like flow in and out of time signatures easier. And it's really changed my overall approach. And yeah, it's been really cool to incorporate all these earlier influences and see how they've kind of come together in my my playing currently. So I do think that they've allowed me to write, or learning these grooves and rhythms has allowed me to write in ways that I wouldn't have even thought to before. You know, it's not some of the trying to find the best way to say this. Some of the ways that you have to play these grooves, it's just like you would never naturally think of these things on your own. Like some of these exercises and rhythms that I've learned with Earl. So just through attempting them, it's like so different than anything you're ever just going to stumble into. So yeah, it's been really cool to kind of learn a lot of different styles through that. And then, yeah, bring it together with my pop punk stuff or alternative or whatever I'm playing. So it's had a big impact for sure. And sometimes it's conscious or not, like the certain types of patterns, you know, will sneak their way into my playing, you know, and the way I'm able to digest more complex music now is definitely a result of my studies with Earl and the African rhythms. And yeah, super duper impactful with the way it has affected both my playing and just my understanding of music in general.
Mm-hmm. All right. Well, let's go to number 5. And that is Disappear Here is the album name. The release year is 2016. The artist is Bad Sons. The song choice is Patience, and the drummer is Miles Morris.
Yeah.
So let's just listen to a bit of that. Are you a fan of the Cars?
I'm actually not familiar.
This actually reminds me of a little bit faster but more current Cars.
Cool. I should dig into some more of the Cars then.
Yeah, the drums sound great in this. It's like sonically so good.
Yeah. Both the actual drum tones and then the Miles style is just so like I really, really love his playing. And Bad Sons are a newer influence for me, but over the last couple years, I've just been so into their music. And you know, both Miles, he comes up with such, I think he definitely has achieved playing parts that are really tasteful, and they could be fancy, but they're so, they just fit so well, and he complements the song so well, but he comes up with awesome, different, tasteful grooves. And then on top of it, I could just hit play on their whole discography and just sit there and listen and love every single song. I can't get enough of the band. And his style, like that little intro groove, just like going to the cowbell or the woodblock or whatever he's using for that intro. It's just so, those little things just make the biggest difference. Yeah. And he could have played that groove 50 different ways, but it's just that little thing that just makes it, you know, a whole riff of its own. And that song is an awesome song, but there are many tracks that he just has so many moments that stand out, and so many cool fills and interesting grooves, and then also just very straight ahead grooves. And that's what I love, is the super, like, just does a super great job of supporting the band while adding his flavor in, peppering it all in. And it just sounds so cool. I'm such a fan of him and the group. I think it's very cool when you could take all the music away from a song and just put the solo drum track out there, and people who know nothing about music can easily identify the drum part. I think that's pretty difficult to do if you're, not a musician, or if it's just like the parts that are written in these songs are just so, they could stand alone. And I don't think, again, not everyone likes that. Some people want something that's more straightforward, but for me, I love that when I hear something and I'm like, oh, it makes me want to turn up my stereo and just keep hitting replay to figure out what they were doing there, just to hear it again, because it just sounds so cool. And so, yeah, for me, that style has always resonated. And I really appreciate that inventiveness, in different drummers. So a good drummer is someone that can take direction with that kind of stuff, just because that's my style. I love to play that way. I love to come up with fun, creative parts. But if I'm hired for something and someone says, chill out and play something like this, I will play it like that. And and so for me, I do appreciate, that there's a time and place, in my original projects where I have a lot of freedom with the drums and I'm able to write parts of my own. That's generally how I like to play. But when it comes to a gig or a more professional situation, I'm going to do what's required of me, So I like that I think any one of the drummers that were listed on this list can turn it on and off, and I really think that's what it's about, to have a particular style that you love to play that inspired you to play in the first place, but then being able to adapt to each musical situation you're finding yourself in. And that's what makes a pro, being able to do that. I've had many gigs now in situations where there's a lot of writing on the spot, whether it was the HE band gig or like a lot of the work I do with my friend Rob Scallon in the studio for his YouTube channel. A lot of it is I walk in having no idea what we're going to record that day. We write and then we release whatever we wrote that day on YouTube or Spotify or whatever. A lot of other situations too. But I think that through those experiences, I've gotten so much better at playing what comes to mind, receiving feedback, and changing it, and that's really fun for me, because sometimes they're going to like what you did and be like, oh, I wouldn't have thought of that. That's a cool part. Keep doing that. Or sometimes they're going to say, hey, that's cool, but pull back in this spot, or this spot. And yeah, you just do it. And so that's been really good experience for me, to have to change parts very quickly or write on the spot. Again, you do what comes naturally and then you take direction from there. And that's a good way to keep a gig.
Yeah, amen to that. Well, speaking of gigs, I want you to be able to talk about where people can find you, meaning like live, because you're obviously playing more drums. How can people see you do your thing?
Yeah, so of course you could still see me and find me on the web. I'm always posting on Instagram, and I anticipate I'll be posting a lot more on social media. So Jaybird's Beats or Jessica Burdeaux, you could search me up on Instagram, YouTube, all that good stuff. And then I'll also be posting about live performances on those platforms as well. I anticipate I'll be doing a lot of touring. I've got a couple different bands plus some other projects that are probably going to be having me travel around and playing shows. So just search me up and keep your eyes peeled. I'll be putting stuff out there. So I hope to see some people at some shows, but otherwise lots of content coming your way.
Hell yeah. Well, you are a hoot. I will now confirm that second time.
You're a hoot too.
Oh, thank you. All right. Well, I will let you go, Jessica, but let's just pretend there's music fading in right now.
Yeah.
I will talk to you later. I'm going to go make some food, but I'm glad you're well. And yeah, I'll talk to you soon.
Always great talking to you, Ben. Thanks for having me. Enjoy your food. I will talk to you soon.
All right, see ya. Bye. And that's the show. If you're listening on a platform that allows ratings and reviews, do that. It helps more people find the show, so it'll get bigger and better, and hopefully I'll have a chance to sell out one day. But you'll be an OG listener that can brag to all your friends. Anyways, why don't you go and check us out at bigfatsnaredrum.com and follow us on all the socials. Just search for Big Fat Snare Drum and you will find us. The show is edited in part using iZotope RX Audio Editor. It's amazing, so go check that out at iZotope.com. And thanks again to Gunnar Olsen for the theme music. Bye!